Here's the number they don't put on the retirement planning brochure. The average American thinks they need $1.2 million to retire comfortably. $1.2 million. That's the number financial advisors whisper like a bedtime story to scare you into buying more mutual funds. And for about 85% of working Americans, it's a number they will never, ever reach. But here's what those same advisors don't tell you. Because frankly, it's not in their interest. There are places in this country where a retired couple can live beautifully on $38,000 a year, where the air is clean enough to taste, where your neighbors still know your name without needing to check your Instagram, where the median home price is less than the down payment on a mediocre condo in Austin. These aren't abandoned coal towns selling false hope. These aren't the rural hellscapes reality TV exploits for ratings. These are real, thriving, gorgeous small towns that have cracked the retirement code, and the people who live there are laughing, quietly, at everyone who didn't figure it out sooner. 10 towns, real numbers, zero tourism board spin. Hit that like button if you're brave enough to see number 1, and subscribe, because trust me, you are absolutely not ready for where this is going. Number 10, Fernandina Beach, Florida. Population, approximately 13,500. Median home price, approximately $420,000. Nassau County. Let's get Florida out of the way early. But not the Florida you're imagining. Forget the clogged arteries of I-95. Forget the subdivisions named after the wetlands they bulldozed to build them. Forget the guy in Clearwater who got arrested for reasons involving a lawnmower and a pelican. That Florida is real, and it exists, and it is thriving in the worst possible direction. But this is Amelia Island, specifically the town of Fernandina Beach, which sounds like something a novelist invented, but is in fact an 8-mile barrier island off Florida's northeast coast that has been flying so far under the radar, it practically has its own air traffic control tower. Here's the pitch. Subtropical climate, white sand beaches, historic Victorian downtown with actual architectural bones. And this is the critical part, it is north enough to be functionally insulated from the fever dream that South Florida has become. The average high in January is 61 degrees. You will not die of heat in May. These are not small victories. The median home price sits around $420,000, which sounds steep until you remember this is waterfront Florida real estate, and comparable properties in Naples run closer to $800,000 and come with an HOA that will cite you for your doormat. The crime rates in Nassau County run consistently below the national average. The downtown has independent restaurants, a year-round farmers market, and a shrimping fleet that still actually goes out and catches shrimp, which is rarer than it sounds. Locals on the ir/Amelia_Island Reddit thread describe it as what Florida was supposed to be before Florida became Florida. One reviewer on niche.com wrote simply, "I moved from Boca. I finally feel like a human being again." The knock? Property taxes in Florida are manageable, but flood insurance is a real budget line item. And the island's popularity is quietly rising, which means the window on this one doesn't stay open forever. But if you thought Florida could be tamed, wait until you see what the Blue Ridge Mountains do to a person's bank account. Number 9, Brevard, North Carolina. Population, approximately 8,000 mice. Median home price, approximately $325,000. Transylvania County Brevard sits in a county named Transylvania, which tells you either that the locals have a magnificent sense of humor or that the 19th century cartographers were working with very limited information. The real story is both less gothic and more interesting. Picture this. You're driving the winding 2-lane roads into the Pisgah National Forest, the kind of road that makes your GPS quietly lose faith in itself, and you drop into a small valley where there's a waterfall approximately every 400 feet. Transylvania County has somewhere north of 250 named waterfalls. That's not a typo. That's just the terrain doing what it does, and it does it aggressively. Brevard got famous among a certain kind of person for its white squirrels, an actual genetic population of leucistic eastern gray squirrels that run wild downtown and have their own festival, because of course they do. But what matters for the retirement math is this. A 3-bedroom home in town runs around $325,000. The elevation keeps summer temperatures in the low 80s maximum. And the town has quietly become a genuine arts and outdoor recreation hub without tipping into the insufferable zone that Asheville crossed sometime around 2018. The Brevard Music Center brings in serious classical performances every summer. There are legitimate craft breweries, a few excellent restaurants, and a main street that functions as an actual main street rather than a simulacrum of one. Violent crime rate, well below national average. CETA Healthcare, anchored by the Transylvania Regional Hospital, with Mission Health facilities in Asheville 35 minutes away. The winters are honest. Not brutal, but honest. Snowfall averages around 10 to 15 inches annually, which is enough to be scenic and not enough to be a problem for anyone who's survived a Midwest winter. A retiree on the topretirements.com forum described moving here from Chicago as trading existential dread for existential peace. That's not a slogan. Oh, and that's a review from someone who figured it out. But if the mountains are calling you deeper in, past the Instagram overlooks and into somewhere rawer, there's a town in West Virginia that most people drive through without stopping. Those people are wrong. Number 8, Lewisburg, West Virginia. Population, approximately 3,800. Median home price, approximately $195,000. Greenbrier County, West Virginia gets a narrative it doesn't entirely deserve. Yes, the economic story in much of the state is genuinely painful and complicated and not something to gloss over. But Lewisburg, the county seat of Greenbrier County, sitting on a high plateau at 2,300 feet elevation, is a different chapter in a complicated book. It was named the coolest small town in America by Budget Travel in 2011, which feels like the kind of award that should come with an asterisk, but the town has kept the receipt and spent it wisely. The historic downtown is a legitimately charming grid of 18th and 19th century architecture, independently owned restaurants, working galleries, and a Carnegie Hall. Yes, a Carnegie Hall, the other Carnegie Hall, built in 1902, which hosts live performances and has the energy of a place that takes art seriously while also being deeply unpretentious about it. The number that will make you set down your coffee. The median home price in Lewisburg hovers around $195,000. For a historically preserved small city with 4 actual seasons, clean mountain air, and a functioning culture. The Greenbrier Resort, a legendarily grand old hotel that used to house a Cold War bunker for Congress, so because the 1960s were a specific kind of deranged, is down the road and employs a good portion of the county, which stabilizes the local economy in ways most rural towns don't have access to. The honest costs. West Virginia's broader economic struggles mean access to certain specialized healthcare requires a drive. The state's infrastructure, outside of Lewisburg's well-maintained core, can be variable, and the winters on that plateau have a personality. But property taxes are among the lowest in the nation, and Social Security income is not taxed by West Virginia at all. A Yelp review for a Lewisburg restaurant reads, "Didn't expect to find food this good in West Virginia. Then I felt guilty for being surprised. Then I ordered dessert." That's the Lewisburg experience in a paragraph. Stay in the Appalachian orbit a little longer and head roughly 700 miles southwest, where the plateau breaks and the land turns red and the altitude gets spiritual. Number 7, Taos, New Mexico. Population, approximately 5,700. Median home price, approximately $335,000. Taos County. There is a specific kind of person who discovers Taos and never fully emotionally leaves, even if they've been back in Columbus, Ohio for 20 years. You know the type. They have a small turquoise something on their kitchen windowsill. They bring up the quality of the light at dinner parties. They are not wrong. Taos sits at 6,969 feet in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of northern New Mexico, which is elevation high enough that the first week you will notice your breathing, and the skies put on a light show at dusk that feels like the atmosphere is personally trying to apologize for something. The town has been a magnet for artists since Georgia O'Keeffe and D.H. Lawrence landed here in the 1920s, and the creative lineage has never really broken. Here's the retirement case. Median home price around $335,000, but properties farther from the historic plaza drop considerably. New Mexico does not tax Social Security. The state offers a sizable property tax exemption for residents 65 and older. The weather is 300 days of sun annually, with actual winter snow at the ski valley that powderheads genuinely travel for. The Taos Pueblo, a living Native American community and UNESCO World Heritage Site, is a half-mile from downtown and provides the kind of cultural depth that most retirement destinations fake with a Heritage Days festival. The The grocery situation requires some adult acceptance. You will drive to Espanola or Santa Fe for a real supermarket. The medical infrastructure is limited. Presbyterian Espanola Hospital is the closest acute care. Altitude can be genuinely challenging for people with cardiac or pulmonary conditions, so this one requires a trial run before a permanent commitment. But the locals, an eccentric, fiercely independent blend of multi-generational Hispanic families, Pueblo community members, artists, and refugees from larger cities, have collectively created something that a Reddit thread in r/New Mexico described as the only town in America where every single person you meet has an interesting story and none of them are trying to sell you anything. From the high desert, head northwest until the land cools and greens and gets unusual in a completely different direction, toward a peninsula in Washington state where it almost never rains. Number 6, Sequim, Washington. Population, approximately 8,000. Median home price, approximately $430,000. Clallam County, Sequim, pronounced Squim because the Pacific Northwest reserves the right to do what it wants with vowels, sits in something meteorologists call a rain shadow, a quirk of geography where the Olympic Mountains block the Pacific moisture that drenches the rest of western Washington, leaving this particular strip of the Olympic Peninsula with roughly 16 inches of rain per year. Seattle, 75 miles away across Puget Sound, gets 38. The rest of the peninsula gets upwards of 140. This is not a minor distinction. This is the difference between choosing your retirement town and winning it. Sequim is lavender country. The dry, sunny microclimate that defies all logic given its geography produces lavender fields in purple abundance every July, and the town leans into it with a festival and a certain casual smugness that is entirely earned. The Dungeness Spit, a natural sand spit stretching nearly 6 miles into the Strait of Juan de Fuca, the longest in the country, starts practically in town. The Olympic Peninsula wraps you in temperate old-growth rainforest and jagged peaks. The birding is world-class. The pace is firmly set to low. The median home price sits around $430,000 and has crept upward as the retiree migration word got out. And the trade-off is that getting to Sequim requires either a ferry ride across Puget Sound or a drive that loops around through Olympia, which, depending on your relationship with scenic detours, is either a minor inconvenience or part of the charm. Healthcare is anchored by Olympic Medical Center, which is a full-service regional hospital, and the VA has a clinic here. Relevant, as Sequim has one of the highest concentrations of veterans of any small city in the country. The population skews older. The community is tight, and the town Facebook groups have the warm, slightly chaotic energy of a neighborhood that actually functions as a neighborhood. One local on Nextdoor reportedly organized a community response to help a 78-year-old woman whose car broke down in 35 minutes flat. On a Tuesday afternoon, Pacific Northwest peace secured. Now let's talk about a town that earned its character the hard way, by going broke, going weird, and refusing to apologize for either. Number 5, Bisbee, Arizona. Population, approximately 4,800. Median home price, approximately $215,000. Cochise County. Imagine a town that was, for a brief moment in the early 20th century, the largest city between St. Louis and San Francisco. A copper boomtown so flush with money that they built a grand hotel and an opera house and multi-story Victorian homes up the sides of the Mule Mountains like they were building on flat ground and just forgot to stop. Then the copper ran out, the people left, and the buildings stayed. What rose from the ruins is one of the genuinely strange success stories of American small-town reinvention. Bisbee became an artist's colony in the 1970s when rents were so cheap that creative people could afford to just be there. And something about the altitude, 5,538 feet, the wild physical beauty, and the Victorian bones of the place created a culture that persists and compounds. The median home price is around $215,000. In a town with legitimate architectural character, a walkable historic downtown, galleries, independent restaurants, and a Halloween celebration that locals describe with the reverence most people reserve for religious holidays. The climate is high desert mild, summers that don't cook you, winters that don't punish you, and roughly 300 days of sun. Where the Copper Queen Mine Tour will take you underground into the actual geology of the place, an experience that is equal parts fascinating and claustrophobia-inducing. The Bisbee 1000, an annual staircase race through the neighborhoods, will either inspire you or remind you why you retired. The town has a significant LGBTQ+ population, a fact relevant for retirees who value that kind of inclusive community DNA. The critique is real. It is 90 miles from Tucson, which is where you go for the hospital, the Costco, and the airport. The town has a slightly end-of-the-road energy that some people find liberating and others find quietly unsettling, and the population has genuine economic fragility beneath the quirky surface. But the person who wrote on TripAdvisor that Bisbee is "what happens when artists inherit a mining town and refuse to leave" captured it precisely. It's a handmade place in a world drowning in mass production. From the eccentric Southwest, let's pivot east, to a town in Georgia that a Union general decided, against all military logic, to spare from the torch. History, it turns out, is a real estate strategy. Number 4, Madison, Georgia. Population, approximately 4,400. Median home price, approximately $310,000. Morgan County. The story goes, and historians have enough receipts to call it more than legend, that when General William Tecumseh Sherman burned his way through Georgia in 1864, he bypassed Madison almost entirely. Multiple reasons get offered. A senator who'd opposed secession had friends in Union circles. The town was simply too beautiful to destroy. Sherman had a moment of aesthetic conscience at the worst possible time. Whatever the actual reason, Madison emerged from the Civil War with its antebellum architecture intact, and the result is the most improbably preserved collection of pre-war Southern homes in the country. This is a town where you drive down streets lined with Greek Revival and Federalist and Italianate mansions sitting behind ancient live oaks. And you realize you are looking at what American small-town architecture was before most of American small-town architecture got demolished and replaced with strip malls and sameness. The retirement math is compelling. Median home price around $310,000, lower if you step slightly outside the historic core. Georgia's tax treatment of retirement income is favorable. Social Security is exempt, and there are income exclusions for pension and retirement income for residents over 62. Atlanta is 60 miles west, meaning Hartsfield-Jackson is accessible, and Piedmont-Athens Regional Medical Center is 30 miles east. Madison has a main street that functions, independently owned boutiques, restaurants with actual kitchens, a thriving arts scene anchored by the Madison Morgan Cultural Center in a renovated Romanesque Revival schoolhouse from 1895. The social fabric is tight in the way that Southern small towns specialize in, which can feel warm and welcoming, or occasionally like everyone already knows everyone, and you are the topic of gentle, well-meaning speculation. Both are true simultaneously. A retiree who moved from the Chicago suburbs wrote on the Top Retirements forum, "I walked downtown on a Tuesday morning, and 3 separate people I'd never met said good morning to me. I cried in my car. I'm not ashamed." Georgia's antebellum grace is hard to top, but there's a town in Idaho where the mountains are bigger. The powder is deeper, and somehow the cost of living didn't get the memo that it's supposed to be expensive. Number 3, McCall, Idaho. Population, approximately 3,500. Median home price, approximately $560,000. Valley County, McCall. Idaho is the kind of place that makes you want to call your financial advisor and ask why nobody told you about this earlier. It sits on the south shore of Payette Lake, a glacier-carved, crystalline, impossibly blue body of water at 5,000 feet elevation in central Idaho, ringed by the Payette National Forest, which is to say surrounded by 2.3 million acres of wilderness that the federal government has the good sense to leave mostly alone. Yes, the median home price is around $560,000, the highest on this list, and it requires acknowledgement. This is not a budget retirement, but the Idaho income tax situation offers some relief. And more importantly, what that $560,000 buys you is legitimate mountain town proximity. Not a ski town that priced itself into absurdity. Is not a gateway community that's actually 45 minutes from the thing it's a gateway to. McCall is the thing. Brundage Mountain is the local ski resort. Low-key, uncrowded, real snow. The kind of hill where you can ski first chair on a Saturday without camping overnight in a parking lot. The lake is paddleboardable in summer and ice-fishable in winter and stunning regardless. The McCall Winter Carnival, held every February, produces ice sculptures of escalating ambition that the entire community turns out to appreciate, and which locals on the town Facebook page debate with the intensity most communities reserve for zoning disputes. The critical practical note: McCall is 106 miles north of Boise, and Boise is where your serious medical care lives. This is not a small caveat. For retirees managing complex health needs, the remoteness is a real variable in the calculation. For healthy, active retirees who prioritize outdoor living and are comfortable with the physical demands of 4 real seasons at altitude, it is the kind of place that people move to and then quietly stop talking about moving somewhere else. Idaho has no tax on Social Security. Property taxes are manageable. The air at 5,000 feet has a specific quality that people who've breathed it describe with the vocabulary of religious converts. Out from Idaho's high country, let's come south, to a Colorado river town where the Arkansas River runs through the middle of the city, and the median home price will make you wonder if someone made a typo. Number 2. Salida, Colorado. Population: approximately 5,800, median home price: approximately $445,000, Chaffee County. Salida is what happens when a 19th century railroad town gets gentrified by the outdoors instead of by money, and the result is something you haven't quite seen anywhere else. It sits at 7,083 feet in the upper Arkansas River Valley, surrounded by more 14,000-foot peaks, 14ers in Colorado parlance, than any comparable area in the state. The Arkansas River runs directly through town, and it runs fast, and it runs clean, and people raft it and kayak it and fish it from within literal walking distance of coffee shops and galleries in a historic downtown that earned its commercial arts district designation by actually having working artists rather than by posting signage about them. The median home price around $445,000 has risen sharply in the past several years. Salida got discovered, and discovery in Colorado has a familiar trajectory, but it remains significantly below the Vail Telluride Aspen tier, which has effectively become a gated community for the wealthy with a ski lift attachment. What Salida retained is a genuine working-class and creative mixed community, where the person making your espresso might also be selling paintings, and the person renting you a kayak might be a retired surgeon from Houston who figured it out 5 years ago. Colorado's tax treatment of retirement income is one of the better deals in the Mountain West. Social Security is exempt, and there's a pension-choosed annuity exclusion that kicks in at 55. The healthcare situation is real. Heart of the Rockies Regional Medical Center is a critical access hospital in town, competent for most needs, with more specialized care in Pueblo, 2 hours, or Colorado Springs, 2 hours, or Denver, 3 hours, depending on Monarch Pass's mood in winter. The altitude demands respect. At 7,083 feet, the cardiovascular adjustment takes weeks, and people with serious heart or pulmonary conditions should trial run Salida before committing. But for the person who wants to be genuinely surrounded by serious mountains rather than near them, who wants a real art scene rather than a facsimile, and who can handle the honest physical demands of Colorado elevation, Salida is the mountain retirement that Breckenridge used to be before it became a weekend destination for people who primarily go there to Instagram the chairlift. One post in r/Colorado reads, "Salida is what Crested Butte would be if Crested Butte was still Crested Butte. If you know, you know. 2 down, 1 to go." And number 1 is not what you're expecting, because the best retirement town in rural America doesn't hide in the mountains or sleep on a coastline. It sits in the Texas Hill Country, pours you a glass of local wine, and has been waiting patiently for you to arrive. Number 1, Fredericksburg, Texas. Population, approximately 11,000. Median home price, approximately $495,000, Gillespie County. In 1846, a group of German immigrants settled a stretch of the Texas Hill Country and built a town so thoroughly German in character that it maintained a formal peace treaty with the Comanche, a diplomatic achievement that escaped the Texas Republic itself, and named their streets after German intellectual heroes: Llano Street, Schubert Street, Bowie Street, and yes, on somehow also San Antonio Street, because Texas is going to Texas regardless. They built limestone farmhouses and Sunday houses and a tradition of precise, unhurried craftsmanship that the hill country climate had the good sense to preserve. What emerged 175 years later is the most complete retirement ecosystem in rural America, and the formula is hiding in plain sight. The case starts with the economics, and then deepens into something harder to quantify. Texas has no state income tax, none. Are zero. Social Security untaxed, pension income untaxed, investment distributions untaxed at the state level. The homestead exemption and the over 65 property tax freeze mean that once you own your home, your property tax bill effectively locks in. It cannot increase for the rest of your life in that home. That is not a minor benefit. That is a structural retirement advantage that people in California and New York are currently paying full-time CPAs to approximate. The median home price sits around $495,000. This is wine country, and wine country prices accordingly. But properties in the surrounding Gillespie County corridor run substantially lower. The town of Fredericksburg proper has become a weekend destination from San Antonio, 70 miles, and Austin, 80 miles, which means the restaurant and retail scene punches significantly above its population weight. You have access to a working main street with independent shops, 50-plus wineries on the Fredericksburg Wine Road, a world-class peach season. Hill country peaches in June are not an agricultural product, they are a religious experience, and a German heritage food culture that produces sausage and schnitzel alongside the Texas BBQ with complete, unself-conscious comfort. The National Museum of the Pacific War, the best World War II museum in the nation outside of Washington, D.C., which locals will tell you with the particular quiet pride of people who know they're sitting on something exceptional, is downtown. Hill Country Memorial Hospital is a full-service regional medical center in town. San Antonio's large medical complex, including the South Texas Medical Center, is 70 miles south, a distance that is meaningful but manageable for a region where the highway is flat and open and you can make the drive in under 90 minutes. The outdoor framework is real. Enchanted Rock State Natural Area is 18 miles north, a massive pink granite dome rising from the hill country that hikers and stargazers have been coming to since before Texas was Texas. The Pedernales River, the cypress-lined swimming holes, the German-style beer gardens where a Friday evening has a specific, unhurried quality that the Gulf Coast, with all its flash, has never quite replicated. Here is the piece that the relocation websites underreport. The community infrastructure for retirees in Fredericksburg is genuinely mature. The Hill Country Council of Governments runs a dedicated senior services network. There are active adult communities with real amenities. There are enough transplant retirees that you are not arriving as a pioneer. You are arriving at a destination that has been receiving you for 30 years and has learned how to do it right. On a retirement forum thread titled, "Why Fredericksburg?" produced a reply that circulated, "Because I drove through on a Thursday afternoon in October, stopped for coffee, walked to the grocery store, walked back, had a peach cobbler at a place that's been owned by the same family since 1971, and didn't look at my phone once. Then I drove home and listed my house in Phoenix the next morning." That's not a review. That's a conversion story. And the Texas Hill Country summers are honest. July and August will cook at 95-plus degrees, and this is not negotiable. The winters are mild and brief. The spring wildflower season, when bluebonnets and Indian paintbrush take the roadside medians from brown to impossible color in 3 weeks flat, is one of the genuinely unrepeatable natural spectacles in the continental United States. Number 1. Not because it's perfect, because it's complete. Because it has the tax structure, the healthcare access, the community infrastructure, the food and culture and outdoor access, and, critically, because it has maintained enough genuine small-town character that arriving there still feels like arriving somewhere, rather than at a slightly smaller version of everywhere else. The Germans figured out this corner of Texas in 1846 and built something that lasted. That's a longer track record than most retirement advice you're going to get. And so here's the lie we tell ourselves about retirement, that it's something you achieve instead of something you choose. We spend decades chasing a number, that 1.2 million, that magic figure, when the actual variable was never the money. It was always the place. The towns on this list are not compromises. They are not consolation prizes for the people who didn't make it to the coast or the city. They are the active, deliberate, winning choice. The people who retire to Salita's River Valley, Ars or Bisbee's copper-stained hillsides, or Fredericksburg's limestone and lavender hill country are not settling. They are the ones who did the math correctly and then had the nerve to act on it. The other 8 on this list are still waiting for you. Drop in the comments. Which one would you actually move to? I'm reading every single one. If your town belongs on a list like this and I missed it, fight me in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Hit that like button. It takes half a second and it tells the algorithm that this kind of real, honest content is worth surfacing over the travel brochure garbage. Subscribe if you want the next one, because we're doing 10 most affordable coastal towns under $300,000, and there are places on that list that are going to make you feel like you've been lied to your entire adult life, because you have. But now you know.